Yet another week of fascinating twists and updates around all things Starship, not just the pad demolition continuing and the new launch site getting ever closer to being finished off, we now have Starship approved for a staggering number of launches. Things are accelerating fast, and if we add in all this magic for the week, we may be very close to seeing the third ever orbital booster capable of reflight. Never a dull moment watching all this, that's for sure.
Hey Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
This video is sponsored by Displate. Hey, Marcus House with you here, and each week right now the old Pad 1 site transformation is quite astounding. In the past week, all of the dirt over the deluge plate has been removed, which had been used temporarily to cushion the fall of the orbital launch mount pieces that were being cut off during the demolition. The legs are now nothing but stubble, and while cutting scrap into smaller pieces to remove off-site, SpaceX are preparing to rip the deluge plate and necessary foundation out. The plan, I'm sure, is already set, but from our perspective peering in from the outside, it is going to be intriguing to watch them tackle that. The demolition continues over at the old water deluge farm. With the concrete blocks that had supported their weir pipes previously removed, they could one by one lift these out. Soon enough, we could see these parts of the pipes leave the site to be recycled. Nice views as always from the many live cams by Lab Padre and NSF. Also, big thanks by the way to the many camera operators that are constantly zooming into all the important development in all hours of the day. Moving up the tower, the arms look to be having upgrades soon incoming as we saw the removal of both sets of accumulator banks. These are required for the hydraulic actuators to move and operate. What this essentially does is allows SpaceX to move the arms with gas that forces hydraulic fluid into the actuators. That hydraulic liquid is stored in the smaller tanks in front of those COPVs. Anyway, it was expected that both sets of arms on the Texas towers would end up with just one set of these accumulator banks instead of two, because the shorter arms don't need to work as hard as the original longer ones. Well, plot twist perhaps, because thanks to RGV aerial photography and their more recent flyover, we can see the set from Pad 2 has also been removed and was seen laying on the ground. At this stage, we don't know if there are upgrades going on with these or if full replacements with another system are on the way, but it's always fun seeing answers to these puzzles come to light. Now, if we peek over to the catch rails for a second, it is actually looking like these will not be reused. In previous flyovers, it looked like they were being cut into their new shorter configuration, but SpaceX have either decided it was too much work to modify them or had always planned to continue slicing them up to discard them because they've been diced up and were here sitting in this pile of scrapped arm pieces. Now, hopping over to Pad 2, we can now see the ship quick disconnect arm fully anchored to the tower and ready for the crew to begin connecting up all the commodities lines seen here, nice and close to where Shaun was capturing this. These provide all the cryogenic propellants that are loaded into the upper stage Starship, as well as all the other necessary supply and return lines. Think of all those high pressure gas, electrical and data lines needed to prepare that Starship stage for launch. In fact, looking here, the first of the pipes connecting the launch tower to the ship quick disconnect arm had already been installed. With the arm in its vertical position, you can also see some lines which seem to end, well, currently nowhere. These we think will likely be used during the chill down sequence like the various vents used with the Pad 1 missions to date, or even serve as the ship Raptor engine chill discarding vent. Now, strangely, along with SpaceX removing the accumulator banks for Pad 2, not long after, that was followed by the main actuator for one of the arms. A few days later, the second actuator was removed too. Maybe they want to upgrade that as well, but again, perhaps an even more reliable new system is on the way for better control of those arms. Moving down to the launch mount this week, they've removed the methane booster quick disconnect hood for the installation of its own steel gap fillers, just like they did previously with the oxygen hood. These are used to create a good seal between the three pieces of the hood. Heading towards the production site, if we pause at the Sanchez area, we can see SpaceX will soon be kicking off the assembly of another next-generation ship transport stand, with pieces turning up this week for the second. The end piece for the ship quick disconnect that we have been watching for the last few weeks is ripping along too. It has quickly progressed with a ton of its own commodity lines installed along the side. Continuing on to the build site, the construction of Booster 19 is ticking along nicely. As I was closing off last week, having just seen the first 2 sections rolling in for stacking, that meant that we were at a total of 7 rings tall at that point. But this week, the liquid oxygen tank has gotten a lot taller. By Sunday, 2 more sections had moved in, followed a few days later by the next, all 3 being 4 rings tall. That meant that Booster 19 was already 19 rings in height. Next comes the lower part of the methane transfer tube, which we suspect acts as the landing tank. The great thing is, having this separate from the huge transfer tube ensures that the propellant does not slosh around too much during that re-entry. Now, this suspected landing tank was moved in less than half an hour after they had moved in the last of the 6 liquid oxygen barrel sections for the booster. We can even see some of the insulation padding already installed too. Now, I'm sure that you have noticed that each week it is getting harder to look past the Gigabay construction. In fact, the main skeleton for the first level is now almost fully in place. They are also getting flooring panels installed in between the walls for access platforms to the station. So yeah, with the second level now going up quickly, we have our first indication of just how tall the doors may be. See the horizontal brace at the top of this level? From this, it looks like it's going to almost match the highest part of the Star Factory. Over at Massey's, the work of scrapping Booster 18 is giving us even more previously unseen magic. With the vehicle already sliced right open, we can now see an unrestricted view showing off all that internal plumbing, including, of course, the new side-mounted liquid oxygen landing tank. Check out those massive struts that are mounted there a bit further away on the tank wall to hold it in place. You can clearly see how much support that they've installed in the central methane transfer tube too. For a good perspective of the scale, these horizontal steps are a ladder where the crew can climb the tube. During the week, SpaceX slowly chipped away, removing more sections of Booster 18's outer tank as well as the methane transfer tube. Once they had removed enough of the outer barrel, we could see the top of that liquid oxygen landing tank poking out. Interestingly, SpaceX have just rolled out a booster transport stand and right behind it a more conventional barrel stand. I think you can probably see where this is going. Yes, the forward dome and aft sections of Booster 18 were loaded up to make their way back to the build site. Perhaps they can indeed salvage some useful parts from these or perform some more thorough inspections on it all from there. Thanks to a road closure being posted in advance, we had a pretty good idea that these would be rolling out overnight as we entered Saturday morning. Just hours before publishing this video, there were both of those sections rolling. Now, in some of the images right next to the pieces from the booster, the deliveries for a second ship static fire stand have continued, including these 2 big diagonal corner pieces. You might think that one stand really would be enough, given that they've only got the one static fire trench here, but if we quickly look over at Pad 2 at the launch site, it appears that they've created the exact footings for a ship static fire stand here too. We're wondering if the intention here is to give SpaceX the flexibility to have a ship placed on a static fire stand, do that static fire test at Massey's, roll the ship to the production site for whatever tweaks are needed along with loading a payload, then roll it to the launch site and keep it here to be stacked on a Super Heavy ready for launch. Now, the S39.1 ship aft structure test article that we have been watching closely for quite some time has been moved into the cryo station here. In no time, the testing kicked off using this on Wednesday. It was filled about halfway with what was likely liquid nitrogen before frost on the outside was reseeding again, so it was a rather short initial test. They were back at it again the next night though, filling it right to the top this time and continued with that loaded test for multiple hours. Plenty of impressive venting in all this before it was detanked. Now, we have also had some great news from the US Space Force for Starship in Florida. I'll jump into that in just a moment, but first, a massive thank you to Displate sponsoring today's video. My whole family loves these, and they're a fantastic way to showcase your passions without the usual hassle of traditional posters. A perfect Christmas gift idea too, given their huge discounts right now for the holiday season. Installing a Displate is a breeze. You just clean your wall, apply the adhesive base, attach the magnet and mount your metal poster. There's no tools required and no damage to your walls. Once you have that on, swapping designs and mixing your plates up is ridiculously easy. Simply lift one off and place another on in just a second. If you want to remove them from where they are and relocate them, the adhesive base sticker there removes cleanly, so you can set these up at the next location really easily. Certainly a perfect way to personalize your area even if you're renting. There are just so many to choose from, and the great thing is you can even get a custom plate made with your own image. Obviously, loving all things space like we all do, I've got a bit of an obsession with the many disc plates that I've already collected, and you will even find some designs like this that have what they call a Textra finish. That adds a neat tactile 3D effect to the surface. No matter what you are into though, just browse the site and you'll find something that you love. Loads of official designs here from top brands like Star Wars, Marvel, Star Trek or Lord of the Rings. You will certainly find a design for any family member or friend with the gigantic range here. They have super fast delivery too. Once you place your order, they will arrive at your door in just 4 to 5 days, and right now there is that terrific Christmas discount going on for the holiday season, so it's the perfect time to pick some up. 1 or 2 disc plates you can pick up for 33% off, a 38% discount for 3, and a huge 40% off for 4 or more, and that even applies to those with the Textra finish. Just follow my link below or use code MarcusHouse at checkout. Thank you, Displate. Okay, so we've got some great information dropped here from the US Space Force together with a whole host of other US agencies. They've now approved a plan where SpaceX will be allocated 76 Starship launches from the upcoming Starship launch pads at Space Launch Complex 37. Yes, that is over 3 times what they are currently allowed at Starbase in Texas, and that of course also includes the catches of the Super Heavy and upper stage Starships too. They've also got approval for the full 76 static fires of the 2 vehicles for each flight with that. I think this is just crazy. At Pad 39 there are 44 launches a year proposed, and at Texas 25. In total, that would be 145 launches per year in the current allocations. Can you imagine watching the coverage of almost 3 Starship launches each week on average? I cannot wait. Now, the approved site layout hasn't changed too much since we last looked into it. They will still have 2 launch towers with their own water deluge setup, and they really are separated as far away as they reasonably can be. These pads, just like we are seeing at Starbase Texas, will have the one shared cryogenic storage site together with, we assume, one shared pump farm and other facilities. Interestingly, they also have included an area for these natural gas lines as well as a methane liquefier. Couple that with the big air separation unit just south of the main launch site, and it appears that SpaceX might be aiming to make this launch site capable of almost fully generating its own propellants. Anyway, this is all terrific news because with the approval, SpaceX can now go full steam ahead with the construction of this entire launch site. From this satellite image shared by Harry Stranger, so much has already been removed. Gone is all the remaining unneeded hardware and the ramps that previously existed on the 2 old launch sites that used to help send the Delta IV Heavy on its way. We had plenty of Falcon 9 action included this week as always. Starlink Group 686 was away in the early hours of December 1st from Launch Complex 39A. How it can be December already, I don't know. Where has this year gone? Only flight number 4 for this very young booster of 1095 here, and it carried another batch of 29 Starlink satellites out of the atmosphere. Just Read the Instructions was out there as the landing platform for this one to touch down, and that was just the first for the day. Group 1510 was away from the other side of the country that same evening with booster 1081 on a nice round flight number 20. Now this had 27 on board. For Group 15, all the previous flights for this have been sent with 26, with the exception being the first having only 22, so 27 is the most that we have ever seen being sent into this shell. This is another example of the new optimizations used with the new setup, allowing them to add a satellite to the stack in most cases. Now the reason this is a lower number than the 29 by the way, is because Group 15 has the satellites orbiting at an inclination of 70 degrees instead of the more common 53 degrees. Because of that, the Falcon 9 needs a little bit more Delta V, resulting in 2 less satellites being on board. Of course, I Still Love You was out there for the landing of this one, and they were still only just getting started. Less than 17 hours later, they were back off again in Florida with Group 695 in the late afternoon of Tuesday as the sun was preparing to set. A beautiful photo shared by SpaceX followed, showing off that even more nicely. It was another set of 29 on board, but what made this mission stand out was this. SpaceX later posted a great clean view of booster 1077 coming into land from the perspective of the camera on board the drone ship A Shortfall of Gravitas. Check this out. I love the green flashes after the cutoff of that final center Merlin engine. This stuff still amazes me every week. That still left the Group 1125 mission to go on Thursday afternoon, again from Vandenberg. Now, I mentioned the Group 11 mission last week had the one less satellite with 28 on board instead of 29, and yes, that still seems to be the case here. Given these head into a 53-degree inclination like other groups flying with batches of 29, I'm not entirely sure why they are not adding the one extra Starlink satellite into the Group 11 flights, but it may just be that Vandenberg requires just a tiny amount more delta V than the Florida sites, given that it is positioned a little further north. A little less benefit from Earth's rotation, I imagine, but I'm not entirely sure. If you happen to know, do let me know. For the second time in the week, there was Of Course I Still Love You back out again for booster 1097's 17th touchdown. Now, I was super excited to watch Land Space attempt not only the first flight of their brand new Gisler 3 rocket on Wednesday, but also their first ever orbital booster landing and recovery attempt. Although this looks quite similar to Falcon 9, this rocket is using liquid methane and oxygen as its propellant. There are 9 TQ-12A engines powering the first stage booster and 1 TQ-15 vacuum engine on the second stage. Overall, it is just a few meters shorter than Falcon 9, but it is designed to have a similar payload capability of around 18 metric tons to low Earth orbit if the booster stage lands downrange. Now, we didn't get to see any live coverage of the launch, but Landspace later uploaded some incredible videos of the launch itself. As they stated here, during the flight, all critical events including stage separation, second engine start, fairing jettison, and second engine cutoff all went perfectly. After that, a coast phase and another successful engine burn meant that they could, on their very first mission, demonstrate stable and reliable performance. Wow, that is a terrific achievement for Landspace. Of course, they did also attempt to return that first stage booster to their landing pad. At this point, they had big success already with the return of the stage because it was coming in right on target. Everything looked great until after the first stage initiated its landing burn. In this video, you can see something explode just after that burn started, and it made, let's say, a very energetic touchdown near the edge of the landing pad. This was a terrific attempt though, and based on everything that they've pulled off here so far, I will bet that they will nail the next one, especially now that they have all this data to work with. Once they do land it, China will have the third ever reusable orbital booster, and obviously also it'll be the first outside the US. They are aiming for these boosters to be reused up to 20 times just to start with, so the competition after all these years is really starting to heat up. Arianespace was back in action on December 1st with another Vega C leaping off the pad in French Guiana. Packed between those fairings was COMSAT 7 for the Korea Aerospace Research Institute, and this satellite was almost 2 metric tons. It was placed into a sun-synchronous orbit around 45 minutes into the mission, and within the hour after separation, the ground teams in Antarctica made the first contact. This satellite is apparently, as stated by all the press material, one of the world's most advanced ultra-high resolution optical satellites. So we have got a pretty interesting situation at the International Space Station right now, where the parking spots have officially hit the maximum capacity. For the first time in history, all 8 spacecraft ports are currently occupied. We've got 2 SpaceX Dragons, Cygnus XL, JAXA's HTV X1, 2 Soyuz spacecraft, and 2 Progress cargo ships all up here at the same time. That's crazy. Last week's Soyuz MS-28 mission delivered Chris Williams, Sergei Kuznetsov, and Sergei Mikhaev to orbit, which pushed the crew count to 10. I left you last week with the Cygnus XL cargo vehicle hanging out, grasped only by Canadarm2 to make room for MS-28 to dock. You can see how close they got there as this was hanging out right by JAXA's HTV X1. In this 3D model showing all the spacecraft being fully docked and berthed, you can get an idea of the clearance that they would have had if Cygnus was still attached. Early this week, Cygnus was reattached to the Harmony module, where it will remain until March before that is disconnected and sent back into Earth's atmosphere to burn up, along with about 11,000 pounds or almost 5 metric tons of trash that will be packed inside. Meanwhile, the Expedition 73 crew are preparing for their return to Earth. They're scheduled to board Soyuz MS-27 and prepare for re-entry and landing in Kazakhstan this Monday, assuming that the schedule holds with any weather issues that can always arise. Now, as a side note, Oleg Artemyev, who was supposed to be flying on SpaceX's Crew 12, has allegedly been pulled off that mission for violating US national security regulations. That was to be flying around February, and they will instead be getting a new cosmonaut up to speed for that mission instead. What was reported during the week was that Oleg was removed for violating ITAR, or International Traffic in Arms regulations. Apparently, he allegedly photographed Falcon's engines and SpaceX documents with his phone, but this doesn't seem to be entirely confirmed at this point, so it's going to be interesting to see this story unfold. Anyway, at the same time the International Space Station is packed, we get to celebrate 25 years of continuous human presence aboard the station, and this started with Expedition 1. The initial construction phase spanned from the launch of the core module all the way back in 1998 to the docking of the service module in the year 2000. There were crewed missions during this phase, but life support was provided by the visiting space shuttle and not the station itself, so time on board was limited by that factor. This all changed when the crew of Expedition 1 docked to the complex in November of 2000. This crew of 3 were astronaut and commander William Shepard and cosmonauts Yuri Gidzenko and Sergei Krikalev. Now, the 3 had the vital role of assembling life-critical components inside of the already docked modules, all while relying on the life support from Soyuz. They departed the station in the space shuttle brought up by Expedition 2, and since then, there has been an unbroken chain of overlapping crews up here that still exists to this day. Indeed, what began with this crew has evolved into the global laboratory for science, engineering, and exploration that we watch every week. Over the decades, astronauts have stepped out of the station more than 270 times to upgrade and repair the station. They've even sampled microorganisms clinging to the exterior, all while testing spacesuits and other technology that will shape missions in the future to the Moon and Mars. It really is going to be very sad seeing it left to burn up in the atmosphere in a few years' time. We do, however, have some promising commercial space station technology on the way, so with any luck, we'll have more options by then. It feels like we've really just started to see that low-cost mass to orbit with Falcon and the Crew Dragon missions. Since Demo 2 in 2020, the US were finally back to launching Crew after that lengthy period between the end of the shuttle missions in 2011, so the hope is that the International Space Station ends up being just the foundation for everything that is to follow. So there we have it, my friends, another exciting week done and dusted. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did and you are not already subscribed, that button down there doesn't press itself. Huge thank you to the many patrons, ex-subscribers and YouTube members helping us do what we do. If you want these videos ad-free and to be listed here as well, the links are all in the description below. If you want to continue with more space goodness, check out this video here next, and thanks for watching all this way through. I will see you all in the next video.